Okay, what are all these tombstones doing sitting against the back of my house, up against hastily taped up painter's tarp or drop cloth? These are going to be the finishing touches on some new shelving I'm putting in my basement. I even have some sitting against the tree over there. 8 pieces total. These were from some old basement shelving that I put together when I bought the house over 30 years ago, and I needed to move it away from the wall because the basement wall was being waterproofed or water sealed. So that involved a big excavation and sealing with a liquid membrane product and foam, and then backfilled, demolition of some stuff on that side of the house in order to do that. And the inside cracks were filled and sealed, and some hydraulic cement put in to fill a couple of chunk outs, and some basement crack sealer product, dry lock, was applied. And day after tomorrow it's going to get painted inside and out, and pretty soon the siding is going to get redone on the house, so I didn't care too much if I did some painting up against the siding, but I still put a little protection on it. Anyway, so the old shelving was wooden, just made out of 4x8 sheets of plywood cut down the middle to make 2x8s, and then put end to end to make a 16-foot shelf unit, 2 feet deep. And I made 2 of those and bolted them up end to end, and actually I made 3 of them, but one set one on a different wall, and they've served me well for 30 plus years. But that contraption needed to come out. I couldn't move it without dismantling it, and it isn't rigid unless it's also screwed up against the wall. So I decided I was getting rid of the wooden one and buying some comparable new product that also would have casters on it, so every 4-foot section could be wheeled out if I need to get at the wall to plug a leak or, you know, do anything back there. It's just better to have them on casters. But the new shelves are welded wire mesh, which is fine, except a lot of the fairly heavy things I slide onto the shelves tend to get caught on that type of surface. So I realized I could salvage some of the plywood from the old shelves, trim it to size, notch it at the corners to fit around the posts on the new shelving, and I gave it a fresh coat of paint. They were Rust-Oleum brown before, and they're Rust-Oleum brown now. So I gave them a coat yesterday. I flipped them over and gave them a coat on the flip side this morning, and tomorrow morning I'm gonna stick them on the shelving. Anyway, I decided I was going to show you what kind of shelving I bought and how it goes together. So these are the products I bought. The main part is the H-3157 in the BL version. Normally it's just chrome plated steel, but if you get the BL suffix on there, then you get a black powder coated steel frame instead of the chrome finish. I was going to get the chrome, but it turned out that at the moment I was making the purchase, the BL version was less expensive by more than a few dollars from the regular chrome version, so I went with that, and I'm kind of glad I did. Just buying that by itself doesn't get you the casters, but you can buy it one way or the other. You just have to check the catalog for the proper part number. So you can get this with screw feet, in other words leveling feet for each of the legs, or you can get it with chrome plated steel casters. That's that part number, H-1205WHC. Then the actual shelves are that part number. You can order them separately, and the vertical post to that part number. But as I recall, that 3157 BL actually includes all of that stuff, the casters, the shelves, and the posts. You can also buy accessories such as dividers. Maybe you've got a lot of things on there which might want to tip over or something. You can put dividers on that clamp onto the wire frame. You can get things like I'm doing with the plywood. If you've got things that might fall through or get stuck on the wire frame mesh, you can get plastic inserts that lay on top. But I deemed them to not look sturdy enough for what I was doing, so plus I saved the money by just reusing the wood that I had. And there's a whole bunch of other accessories to use them in different ways. You can even bolt them up so they make, you know, L shapes or whatever configuration you want. Anyway, so that's the part number. These things come by motor freight. They don't ship them by UPS or FedEx, so you have to be willing to have a motor freight delivery. You know, I had a guy coming in a semi truck with ULine on the side. Called me and made an appointment for when to drop them off, and brought them right to where I wanted them on a jack lift. In other words, a man-powered pallet jack. That's another name for them. Anyway, so here it says again, H-1750 shelf. So that's just the part number for the shelf itself. And they're 48 by 24 inches, in other words 2 feet by 4 feet. And it does say black wire shelving, but again, that's not the whole thing. Also get these tall skinny boxes, which are the H-2130 post. It's the black wire shelving 63-inch posts with self-leveling feet, 2 per carton. So it depends on how you're configuring these things. You might not always need 4 posts for a set of shelves. If you're putting them into a junction, like I said, maybe putting them together in an L shape or something, then you don't necessarily need all the posts at every corner because one will support another or something like that. Then you get this heavy box, the H-1205WHC. It's the chrome casters, 4 per carton. And those do seem to come only 4 in a set. So first I'm going to start off by cutting open one of the boxes of the posts. So you've got the 2 posts in the box, each in its own plastic wrapper, prevents scratches and dings. And at the end of the box is a little cardboard box that has a set of the leveling feet, which I'm not going to use since I'm using the casters. But I'm going to save them in case I ever want to do something different with these shelves. So here's a pair of the posts. At one end it's an open tube. These are just steel tubes, kind of like conduit. And at the other end they've got black plastic caps. There are detent notches running all the way around every inch. For some reason there's a double one right about, and there's a couple places where they've got double ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Not sure why they do that. Anyway, they have, on top of the powder coating, they have numbers that are on there, like 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 62 on the top. And those are approximate heights of the shelves, assuming that you've got the adjustable leveling feet installed on the bottom. Then the foot will be out to about here, and that'll be about 3 inches to the 3-inch line. Here's one of the leveling feet. It's like a zinc casting with a threaded hole, and then like a carriage bolt that's got its head embedded in a firm plastic foot. And you can kind of drive these in with a rubber mallet. And then once they've got them in there, then you can adjust the feet one way or another to adjust the height for leveling and to keep them from rocking on an uneven floor. Now, something that's not described in the manual that comes with these is there's a whole bunch of these things. They're kind of rubbery plastic, not described at all, not included in the list of things that are supposed to be in the kit. And indeed, while everything else comes in plastic bags, these were just like somebody threw a handful of them in the carton before it got closed up. Alright, let's open up one of the caster boxes. That's what you get in there, 4 casters. Each one in its own little protective bag that surrounds the wheel. So there you are. These are pretty heavy duty because these shelves can carry quite a load. Big, solid, heavy ball bearings on the swivel. Stamped ULine. And each wheel has a brake or a lock. So the big pedal is for locking, and it pushes that barbed plate down against the tire, and then stepping on the small pedal, which rises up when you push the big one down, that unlocks it and causes it to pop back into this configuration. And of course there's a friction locking ring on there to keep it stuck inside the post, but you can always pull it back out again if you need to. To install the casters or the leveling feet into the posts, you need something like a rubber mallet. And to put in the casters in particular, you first need to lock them, or it'll be very difficult to get them to go in because you have to hit the tire to drive them in, and if it's not locked, it'll just spin rather than drive them into the post. So I've been sitting these in some immovable notch that keeps them from rolling even though they're not locked, and I just push down on it, and then the other hand, the heel of my hand pushes down there. These are very firm. They're designed to be operated by your feet, not your hands. And there's the brake on lever pushed down. You can kind of see that the metal plate there is against the tire, and the little pedal for off has popped up to be stepped on easily. Now the wheel's locked. To drive these in, you need some immovable object that you can cradle the closed end of the post against. I found this little notch on the support post in my basement where I've mounted my belt sander or my strip sander. It's just about at the right height, and I can kind of jam the post against that so the hammering forces are directed against the structural post. So with the one end of the post anchored, I stick the post of the caster into the shelf post, and I just give it a few good strikes in this direction on the tire with the rubber mallet. There it's partially driven in. And sorry, I'm just too lazy to set up a tripod to actually show me doing this, but it's pretty simple, so I think you can figure out from these non-animated snippets of video how it goes together. And that's the way it looks when it's driven in all the way. One down, 3 to go. Alright, 4 posts with casters attached. Now here is some shelving. 3 shelves. And these are from the other 3 that I've already put together. Like I said, I've got a total of 4 of these kits. And each one comes with 4 shelves, but I'm only using 3, so I've got 1 left over from each of the 3 I've done. I'm going to use one of these as a drilling template for the wooden pieces because I'm putting screws through and fender washers on the back to anchor them to the wire mesh from the bottom. but I have to wait for the paint to dry a little bit more before I do that. That's tomorrow's job. But I do want to assemble all 4 shelving units today, so I'm not gonna I'm gonna use one of these for drilling tomorrow after I've used another one from the 4th kit to put the rest of the shelving together, if that makes any sense. Okay, time to cut into this last box. Creak! Creak! If you can hear the kids screaming outside, somebody set up one of those inflatable water slides across the street. All the neighborhood kids are going nuts. Alright, so 4 shelves in the box. And by the way, each shelf has got a little removable plastic name badge for ULine and their phone number. So what's on a typical shelf? So you've got a frame around the outside that's like a structural member on a building or a bridge. 2 heavy wires with a zigzag wire welded to them, and that makes this very stiff. And there's something like that going all the way around all 4 sides, and another one right down the center for extra stiffness. And then you've got your big barbecue grill with 5 stiff wires going the long way and a whole bunch of smaller wires going the other way, all of them welded together everywhere they touch, and then powder coated. At the corners are these steel tubes, but they're tapered, so they're smaller at the top, bigger at the bottom, and that is part of how they wedge onto the posts, and I'll get to that shortly. These are kind of heavy. Got out my giant floor scale. I mostly use that when I'm doing eBay shipments. Set the shelf on there, and it's about 16 pounds. Yeah, just under 16 pounds if I don't touch it. So not a trivial weight. And putting one of the caster equipped posts on there, those are just a little over 5 pounds each. So you can do the math for how much these assemblies weigh. Okay, there are all the shelves, the 4 from this box I opened plus the 3 left over from the other ones. And what else is in the box? Well, just a couple handfuls of these little rubbery plastic rings that I already talked about, just thrown in there as an afterthought or a last minute change. And then 2 bags. Like I said, everything else comes in bags. So these are 2 bags full of shelf supports. They're identical. So inside of those are 4 smaller bags of the shelf supports. I get, these are all identical, by the way. They're all exactly the same. But I need to get these on something less reflective. That's better. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these things. They're a heavy plastic. One side has a male tab, the other has a female notch. You can see they're tapered a little bit, smaller towards the top, bigger towards the bottom. And there's a helpful arrow saying top. I think it should say up, but that's okay, works either way. Now these actually go around a little bit. The way these are molded, at least the tab, it circles around past the 180 degree. So that acts like a clip that keeps it in position on the post while you're assembling these things. But ultimately you end up with the tab of one going into the notch of the other one. Kind of like that. And these have ridges on the inside, which apparently sit into those notch rings on the posts. You wouldn't think that that would be enough, but it's not just those. It's also the fact that these are wedges. So they clamp onto the post, and then the wedged rings on the shelves sit on top of that, and it's a combination of compression, just squeezing these together, and the friction you get from the ridges here sitting into the notch rings on the posts. And that should be able to hold hundreds of pounds. Alright, to assemble a shelving unit, I get the 4 posts with their casters set down on the floor, and one of the shelves laying there at the ready. Alright, I have 24 of these set here because there are 2 per post, 4 posts per shelf unit, and 3 shelf units the way I'm assembling it. So I've got them all, and the first thing to do is, I've already figured out from the other ones I built that I need to have shelf supports at the top of the 7-inch segment, the top of the 31-inch segment, and the top of the 55-inch segment. Okay, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got my 2 segments here with the tops oriented properly. There's sawdust stuck on these because I didn't clean the floor very well. And the way I've been doing it is I put them together right about where it says 7, and I get the tab right where the line above the 7 is, and then slide it up until it clicks. Make sure they're squeezed together as much as they will. They'll actually go together more when the shelf tapered tube section squeezes down on this. But basically the number 7 is below the bottom of the shelf support here. I have to do that for the other posts. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 shelf supports are on at the top of the 7-inch segment. Now I get the shelf and I tip it up, make sure the wire meshes on the top or the side away from me, and that means that the tubes here have the taper, the small end here and the large end here. And starting on the bottom, I grab one of the posts and slide it through part of the way. Slide another one in. And these don't have a lot of leeway. If you don't have them going fairly straight, they don't want to go through. And I actually can push these all the way in until the shelf support right here is most of the way in, like that. Now I take the other 2 posts and slide them in about halfway. Now if you're doing this in a warehouse or someplace with a reasonable height ceiling, you can put all 4 posts in as far as they'll go at this point, but because I'm working with an 8-foot ceiling, I'm not even sure it's completely 8 foot. It's a pretty low ceiling. When I tip this back, the 2 legs on the upside will hit the ceiling. I've already taken out one of the lenses for my LED lamps and cracked it. So I need to have these pulled back a little bit so that they won't swing up so far when I'm tipping this back on its wheels, on the casters that is. Alright, I've tipped it on its casters now, but the tubes are not seated on the shelf supports, and that's where the old rubber mallet comes in handy. Watch how this shelf support comes up through the tapered tube. Like that. All right. Now those are in there pretty firmly. But there's something I forgot to do, even though I've done it 3 times already. You'd think I'd remember. I want to be able to see those marks from reasonable orientations relative to the shelving. And right now they're just in there randomly. So what I actually do is dislodge these by hitting on the bottom with the rubber mallet till they pop up a little bit. Like that, and now I can rotate till I get the inch markings facing this way, and when I do those they're going to face the other way. So I can reseat that one and work my way around and dislodge the others. So I don't have real good lighting here. This is on the dark side of the assembly. There's 30, there's 31. So I've got the shelf support on there with the notch and tab right at the top of segment 31. And then I just slide them up until it clicks. And now the bottom of the shelf support is right at 31 there. I don't think that's going to show up very well. Anyway, so now I've got the shelf supports for the next level. Now this is where it gets tricky if you're working by yourself, and I actually, based on my experiences with this, I would recommend you have 2 people doing this. The part I've done so far can easily be done with 1 person, but putting on the shelves above the first one can be kind of tricky and potentially dangerous. Pretty significant injuries can be had. The instructions don't really caution much about it, but these wire mesh assemblies, you know, like I said, they're kind of heavy, and there's a lot of wires there, just the right size to get your fingers through, and you tend to want to grab it that way because it's about the only way you can grab it. But you're trying to get up here, you're holding it up over your head probably, you're leaning forward. You're trying to get all 4 receivers lined up with all 4 posts, and until you have the second level on, they still aren't quite in the right position. So you're screwing around with that, and it's really easy to lose control of the shelf. And if it starts going down, falling to either side, twisting, whatever, your fingers are in between there. It's going to not maybe tear your fingers off, but really mangle them, break them, bend them backwards, whatever. You can get some serious hand injuries from these stupid things. It's almost happened to me already, and I'm a lot more careful, but it still is a risky operation. If you are assembling these and you can at all get somebody to help you with putting the shelves on, that's the way to go. Anyway, so you have to now raise the shelf up over the top. There's not any way to do it besides this. Get the corners or the posts all aligned in the receivers on the shelf, and then lower it down. And that's hard too, because once you get like these 2 receivers over the posts, it wants to drop down, and meanwhile you're trying to get these aligned, and they won't go in because now everything's at an angle, because the shelf is at an angle, and they won't go in at all. And then you're trying to raise that side up. Again, a lot of opportunities for injury. And I can only manage it because I've got this little step stool, so I can work at it from a more comfortable angle. Even then I still have to use the top of my head or my shoulder to kind of go under one part of the shelf to hold it up while my hands are busy lifting or moving the other end of the shelf. So once that shelf has been slid down, do the same thing. And that's set. All right, all 3 levels are on, and I just pop the brakes on the 4 casters. Oops. And then it's real easy to wheel these around. I'll lock one wheel just for the moment. And there is a replacement, a near dimensional identical to the old wooden ones. And they can be easily rolled out from the wall to get away from the wall if I need to do any repair work or inspection. I think they can carry at least as much weight as the wooden ones. Just a better solution. I think I'm going to be pretty happy with this. The only thing that's a downside to them is with the leveling feet, you can adjust for an uneven floor, and these floors, or this floor here, is not real even. So, you know, there's not equal amount of weight on all the casters. Some of them are almost floating. But once they get some weight on them, I think the assembly will twist slightly and sort of self-level in that way. One thing, I'm not really worried about these tipping. I was more worried about them possibly just needing some extra stability. And so one thing I was thinking of is just making a bracket somewhere, you know, like right around here that would go over 2 of these things, and then have something going and anchored to the wall with a couple tap cons, masonry screws or whatever. Then I could just undo a screw here or something and free these of that anchor. Possibly something with a metal rod, maybe a strip of aluminum or something that would be on a pivot, so it would be able to flop down and just hang there. But if I need it, then I can swing it up between these legs, and it would have something on the end that I could have a bracket and a thumb screw or something to just kind of, you know, hold these up against the wall, give them a little extra stability. We'll see when they're under load and at least 2 of the wheels are locked, or casters are locked, if they really need any extra anchoring or not. These are much stiffer by themselves than the wood ones are, so you know, it might be nice to have it so it doesn't move around so much like that. We'll find out. So the only thing I really have to do on these for sure is get those wooden shelves on, and then I'll show how that goes in the remainder of this video. What I have figured out for anchoring the wooden platforms that'll lay on top of the wire mesh is the wooden pieces are sized to sit in between these edge rails, which are a little higher than the mesh by just the whatever that is, 3, I don't know what it is. It's almost 1/4 of an inch diameter wire. So the wood will sit down there. It's notched out at the corners to go around these, but it'll sit in between these rails, so it'll center. But it could rise up and slide out of there, and what I want to do is prevent that. And some of the wood has a slight warp to it as well. So I plan to set them down with the high spot facing down, so it's like concave, and it should be a very small amount of concavedness. And then I have these fender washers in number 12 screws like this, sheet metal screws, and so I would go in they would go in like this, and there's enough screw sticking up to go about 3/4 of the way through the 3/4 inch plywood. And what I'm going to do is, once the paint is dry on those pieces of wood, I'll lay them one at a time into one of these spare frames, and then figure out where the holes should go and put in a pilot hole, because I don't want to be screwing around getting these started and have it be like off by this way or something, you know, to make sure they're in a good position. And that should be able to pull the slight warpage down to the frame and give me a nice robust surface I can slide heavy objects onto. I actually need to get more of these washers because I got a mixture of different sizes. I thought these would be big enough, but they're actually too small. And this is the larger size. This is more appropriate. I need to get more of those. Well, after the crew of 2 guys spent almost a whole day down here scraping and preparing and painting and masking and painting some more, that wall looks 100% better. And the floor with all its peeling paint is pristine again. So I'm going to give it another day to dry a bit more, then it'll be finishing up those shelves. Alright. Basement wall repairs and refinishing done. Shelves complete with the painted plywood boards screwed in. They're all just screwed in like I said before with hex drive sheet metal screws through large fender washers coming up from the bottom into pre-drilled holes per my template. That made pretty quick work of it. Even the ones that had a bit of a warp to it, because I always made the boards lay down in the concave arrangement, and then drawing the corners down with the 4 bolts made everything flat. So that is good. I'm going to try it without anchoring them to anything. See how stable they are. I'm hoping with a bit of weight on them, then pulling any one thing out will be reasonably stable. They can certainly carry the weight, it's just I don't want them trying to wiggle or walk when I'm trying to pull things on and off. Ta-da! Now all I need to do is get the machine tools that I pulled elsewhere and fill up this corner. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 tools that go around this corner. So, success, I think.